late than never. Wednesday, August 5th. Took a brief hiatus thanks to a lovely hurricane whose name I have not tried to pronounce yet. I just call it the hurricane. Thought that hurricane was going to slow me down today, but it looks like we're going to be able to pull this one off. Greg Ehrenberg out, Ben Rasa in, and just in case I die in the middle of this entire stream, the boss man Alex Baker is here as well. Boys, we've got 45 minutes to cram in an NBA strategy show. Alex, how you feeling? Appreciate you joining with no notice whatsoever.
For sure. I mean, I'm just grinding away these mornings anyway, but yeah, it's exciting. Me and Ben will do our best to fill in for Greg here because I know he's having some internet problems as well as a lot of people with this hurricane that's going on. Pretty crazy times. Yeah, no internet for Greg, so he's out. So we tagged in Ben. Then my internet's dying, so we tagged in Alex. But it looks like I might be okay right now. Who the hell knows? Ben, what's up? Thanks for tagging in.
Yeah, no problem. I like you, had no power yesterday. For the PGA people, I just want to get this out there real quick. We're back in business tonight, 8:30 Eastern. I know we weren't able to do a show. We will certainly do one today. So I'm happy to be back with you with power.
So normally we would take a quick peek at yesterday's slate and give a little bit of a recap, but we've got an MLB Live Before Lock show or an MLB show coming up in 45 minutes. So abridged version. Alex surprisingly didn't win $100,000 yesterday. I know we're used to that intro. We could have just played an old one. That didn't happen. Winning lineup from DK's $20, De'Aaron Fox, Tyler Hero, TJ Warren once again, Yusuf Nurkic once again, Kelly Olynyk, who is apparently has a pulse now in the bubble. Good for him. Luka went absolutely insane. And then you need Kurucs and Dorian Finney-Smith, obviously. But the one thing that I know that we can touch on, even though we are short on time, that would be SuperDraft. They are the future of daily fantasy sports. No more salary restrictions. You can roster anybody you want. You don't worry about the salary now. You worry about a multiplier. So someone like Luka Doncic might be 1.05, and then you can get someone like Dorian Finney-Smith at 1.8 or something crazy. Making that up off the top of my head, but I assume it's in that sort of range. They've got contests for every sport. You're looking for PGA, NASCAR, MMA, MLB, obviously NBA. NFL will be here soon. If you use the promo code Awesemo10, AWESEMO10, you can get $10 on your first $10 deposit. You can get $20 free on your first deposit of $100 or more. You can go to the website, superdraft.io, or download the app in the App Store. It's SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. Let me just get one SuperDraft in there, and then we're good to go. All right, abridged version. How have I been so far? Connection okay?
Seem good to me. I hear you loud and clear.
That works for me.
I don't know.
Let's start it up. We're going for it. We're going for it. I saw chat saying stream keeps crashing, which is fine by me because that's definitely not my fault.
Yeah, that's not your fault. So I don't know what that is about. But yeah, we got good 6 games here. I missed the Nets winning yesterday, 18.5-point underdog against the Bucks. They do play last game of the slate. That's going to be a key to this one. We'll get there in a bit.
All right, let's kick it off. Utah Jazz, Memphis Grizzlies. They are the first game, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. Jazz 4-point favorites. Looks like business as usual for Utah. Big news coming out of Memphis. Jaren Jackson Jr. done for the rest of the year. Knee issues. That's going to open up a little bit of potentially extra minutes or at least solidified minutes for Brandon Clark. Whether it's Gorgeous Dong or Anthony Tolliver picking up the slack, we do not know yet. We'll throw this to Alex right now. Holistically, for this game, what stands out most to you? Who do you have your eye on?
Yeah, I think that Jaren Jackson being out is kind of the injury news of the day. That is one of the biggest factors. He's missed a good amount of games over the course of the season, so we have an idea of what to expect. Basically, more Jonas Valanciunas minutes. But Brandon Clark probably gets to start at power forward. That's the guy I'm most excited about. And then, as you mentioned, Jang stepping in as the backup center. I'm also expecting that.
We are on the same page there. Ben, any thoughts on this Memphis team now with Jaren Jackson Jr. out? They are still fighting for their lives and fighting for their playoff lives. So anything jump out to you?
I mean, what jumps out to me is they need to find a way to win one of these games. They've been sliding. This doesn't help. Obviously, Clark gonna get the boost. He's gonna be popular, 4,600 on DraftKings. The guy I'd want to talk about, it's not that Jaren Jackson being out per se is going to up the usage. He's already heavily involved. It's Ja Morant, who has just been awful shooting the ball. He took 10 threes, made one in the last game, but the volume is there. He had eight assists, 5 boards. The game before that, 9 assists, 9 rebounds. He's going to, rack up the peripherals. If he can just shoot a decent clip, even at 8K in a price bump, I actually like him. He's going to have, no matter what the scenario is, heavy involvement, and he needs to carry the load offensively.
I'm just going to assume you watched my contenders video this morning, which had Ja Morant in the top 10. My number one play on FanDuel as well at the point guard spot. Huge fan of Ja. 8K kind of scares me on DK, but he's going to get the shot attempts. We just need to hope that they start going in at some point in time. Anything from the Utah side? I just look at this team and think, I'll probably have a little bit of Mitchell, Gobert, Conley, Clarkson, Ingles. I know that sounds ridiculous. It's really hard to sift through them, and they're the only guys I think that truly matter. Royce O'Neal is priced now where he doesn't seem like a real fun guy to roster. Alex, do you have a guy that stands out for Utah, or do they all just sort of look clumped together?
I think the pricing is pretty good on these guys. As you mentioned, Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, they seem to be in the mix. Not maybe the top options today, but pretty good. And Gobert, he's had a little foul trouble, so his minutes have been down to 31 a game over the last couple, but he's averaged 34.5 for the season, so I'm expecting him to also be a good play.
All righty. Ben, anybody standing out to you from your Utah Jazz?
I got this. I'm rocking the Utah Jazz shirt right now, thanks to you. It's one of those situations, nobody stands out. But at the same time, if I land to a price point where I need someone, particularly the guys you listed, I feel fine going to Mitchell, going to Conley for little salary relief, Gobert. They're another team without Bogdan. It feels pretty easy to know who's going to have the production. Not a ton of variance when you look at the team. I'm not looking for aggressive, pivots on this team. But at the same time, I do think you have options if you land in those price ranges.
I pretty much the same. I feel the same way. There's not a single guy from the Jazz starting lineup where I would be bummed out if they showed up in a lineup. They all play solid minutes. They're all prone to have big days or bad days. It's really hard to just sift through that, other than I think that Mike Conley probably has the most advantageous price out of anybody on DK. I think that's good for Jazz Grizzlies.
Nothing else for me.
I don't think we have any news that we're waiting on coming out of that game, so we should move it on.
Jordan Clarkson, just because he was so popular the first couple of slates, but then last slate, we saw the negative side where if he's not playing well, he just got way less minutes. But there's upside there. Just a really high variance play. Not really a stand-up play, but like a GBP option.
So it seems as though some people are having issues with the stream in YouTube chat. Nothing I can do on that one. Listen to the podcast version when it gets uploaded in an hour, I guess. Or catch it afterwards.
Normally, I'll just say for people, normally when we're on a show, you can tell if there's problems. The show seems completely, I don't know about you guys, but it seems completely fine on my end. I know that's not the case for everyone, but
I think this might be a localized YouTube issue, depending on which sort of YouTube servers you connect to. And if I'm being honest, I haven't seen any messages from, hey, this stream's not working well, from a lot of regulars. So.
Well, we have some good advice coming through on the chat. They're saying that, we have it on Twitch and Periscope, obviously. So if it's not working on YouTube, just load up Twitch.
Yeah. Awesemo on Twitch. Periscope link should be on our Twitter account. We can get those links dropped in here too, potentially. That might help a little bit. Let's move it on to the San Antonio Spurs and the Denver Nuggets. Nuggets 4.5 point favorites, somewhere around that area. Not so sure I'm going to get a ton out of San Antonio. ownership coming into DeJounte Murray. He's probably the guy that I like the most. So that feels a little bit more like a cash play than anything else. You would think they would want to run Jake Puddle out there for a little bit more. Denver, massive in the front court. So whether it's Jokic or Plumlee, even if they shift someone like Paul Millsap to the 5, like they really only have Rudy Gay as an option. I don't get the sense I'm going to end up with a lot from San Antonio outside of a handful of Jake Puddle at 5,400 on FanDuel. And if I'm trying to get a little bit different, I'd like to get more White than Murray, but I do prefer Murray to White. Alex, where do you stand on San Antonio?
So I'm looking at these numbers. Obviously, like Murray and White, they haven't started together most of the year. So I'm really kind of trying to find what's changed over these last few games because that's the sample we have. So what I noticed is that Murray's assist rate plummeted. He's been at 23% on the year, and it was 11% in the last couple of games, which is a warning sign for his like per minute production. But his usage went up a tiny bit, so it looks like maybe he was just shooting more and passing less a little bit. Whereas White's assist percentage has been pretty high, as well as DeRozan. So I'm just worried that Murray, his assists won't be nearly as good in this new starting lineup. But I think he's priced really well.
Okay. Ben, any concerns with the backcourt for the Spurs since they're playing 27 guards per game?
There's always concern with the Spurs, and it's one of those things, you know, this is why one of the most important tools that we have is Alex's ownership projections. When I look at the team, the guys I like are also the same guys that the public likes. Murray makes sense, but the public is also going to correlate there. So it's not to say I need to fade it, but you're not going to get a ton of leverage unless you really go crazy. I'm not willing to take that plunge. I will have some Murray like everybody else, but it's not a team that really excites me and a team that I want to make some big aggressive stands on.
Okay, that makes perfect sense to me, and I am in agreement with the two of you guys. Now, on the Denver side, I'm feeling a little different. Nikola Jokic is 9,100 in a spot where the Spurs have essentially one real center. Even 9,700 on DK looks great. Michael Porter Jr. had a monster. I believe it was his last time out, but honestly, the hurricane has messed up my scale of when things have happened. So it could have been 2 games ago. Okay. Yeah. He's 5,500 on FanDuel. That price is way too low for him. I love Michael Porter Jr. I love Nikola Jokic. Paul Millsap even looks pretty solid for 4,800 on FanDuel. Ben, what do you like coming out of Denver? Does it look a little bit different for you on DK?
No, I mean, listen, their last game, it did go to overtime, so some of that is inflated. But at the same time, Porter had a big game. The price is bumped up. But Jokic, I love him at center. He's going to be one of the premier options. We'll have to wait. Not that I have interest in Jamal Murray, but I believe he's going to give it a go today. I think he does play. If you are looking at that's more on the betting side of things. But for me, I'm going to target the front court. I'm going to try to find the money for Jokic. And then over on FanDuel really quickly, him and Embiid are going to garner a ton of interest at center. So you're going to have, I expect most people will pay up for center. And obviously he's going to be one of the big two.
Alex, how are you feeling about Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, and the rest of the Denver Nuggets? And do you think Jamal Murray plays today?
I don't have a strong read on whether he plays or not, but that's enough to make me not really want to target Monty Morris as a value option, even though he's not even cheap anymore, I guess. So I guess it would make a difference for the usage of some of the other guys. But Michael Porter, he was the guy that had the big game last game. We know he's a super high variance player. His price went up significantly in DraftKings, but on FanDuel he's still cheap. So I think it's a situation where if he's low owned, he's a fantastic play. If he's high owned, maybe it's a good fade. So it's hard to take a big stand on that one.
Okay. I don't have much else to add for Denver other than I think they look a lot better on FanDuel than they do on DraftKings. I hate anything from San Antonio, just in general. You never know when you're going to get fully popped, so always keep that in mind. But again, my focus, Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Jr. Shout out to Abe Kim. Thank you for that super chat. We really appreciate it. It helps us out a ton. I know people having some issues, but we do have 420 people in here and 100 likes. If you want to hit that thumbs up, I'd be thrilled. You guys don't seem like you'd be thrilled about it, but do this favor for me. I would really appreciate it if you could hit that thumbs up, please. Or, like it on Periscope and or Twitch. We're happy with those likes as well. Well, this one should be a doozy. Washington Wizards, Philadelphia 76ers, 10-point favorites for those Sixers. I don't know what we're going to do here. I hate picking people from the Wizards because it seems like someone else can go off every single day. Ownership is coming to Troy Brown. Ownership is coming to Rui Hachimura. I have a little bit of interest in Bonga if he's going to be under 4K and fully unowned. That's not a sexy pick whatsoever. This is like a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy. It's not exciting, but at sub 4K and sub 5% ownership, you might want to take a look that direction. Otherwise, I don't have a Wizard that stands out. Alex, are you going to get to anything from this Washington Wizards team?
Yeah, I think the Wizards, I see a trend here in that the pricing on DraftKings makes a lot of players kind of blend into a good but not great category. Now that we have a few games under our belts, like they've done a good job kind of adjusting to the new scenarios. Troy Brown, he obviously had that monster game a couple of games ago. I just really like the minutes he's been getting. And last game, he was in foul trouble, so he didn't see those minutes. But in the second half, he played monster minutes again. So he's the guy that I'm targeting. His usage, assists, everything's been up in this restart. So that's a really nice spot. And then I'm looking for Ish Smith bounce back game here. He got outplayed by Jerome Robinson last game and Napier, so he got his minutes cut significantly. But there's a reason why they moved him to the starting lineup here. So I think that there's a lot of potential, and if he's really outplaying Napier, he could see 30-plus minutes.
Well, he may be frozen, so I'm just going to jump in and give my own takes on the Wizards. Obviously, this team, the bubble's got some bad teams. Washington towards the bottom of it all. I want to ask you, Alex, about Hachimura. I know you didn't really mention him. He's the guy that, he's had double-digit shots in 2 of 3. They need him to, stay on the court. He hasn't been in foul trouble yet. He's got to go up against the bigs here. 5,700 on DraftKings, a little more expensive over on FanDuel. Do you have any interest in him or Thomas Bryant from that front court?
Yeah, Thomas Bryant, he's been absolutely destroying, but his price has gone up to the point where, you can't feel really great about him at 6,800 or 7,100. So that's not particularly exciting, but I don't blame anyone for riding the hot streak there. Hachimura, he's probably the best player on the Wizards right now. So that definitely seems like a good target. He never plays monster minutes, but good usage. His assists have been pretty good recently, and I think maybe it's worth targeting him. How are you feeling about him? He's
actually my favorite Wizard in this game. I think that it's kind of, I don't want to say a buy low spot, but, he's 4 of 12 in the last game, 2 of 6, 8 of 15 against the Suns, which is very good. But I think we may be live for some double-doubles here going forward and things of that nature, bonuses. And the price is, to me, gonna increase. He's got the drop. He was in the mid-7s to start, and now he's down at 5,700. I think that's kind of the floor for him. So on a team here, yes, they are sizable dogs. They could get blown out, but at the same time, it's very reasonable that they can hang in and make it somewhat competitive. On the other side, Joel Embiid, I mentioned Jokic. Embiid's going to be the other center. We had a question about Joe Val. I do think that's an aggressive pivot if you want to do it, but talk about what is going to be, I think, maybe the premier option over on FanDuel and certainly across all the sites, SuperDraft and DraftKings with Embiid.
Yeah, he's so expensive on DraftKings at 10.4K. It's that's what Luka was yesterday. So it's hard to imagine paying that for Embiid, but he's a great player, obviously. It's just that he doesn't play nearly as many minutes as some other guys. So I like him on FanDuel, as you mentioned. He's a little bit cheaper. If we're digging into the rotations, he's playing 3 shifts a quarter, which that kind of caps the minutes upside to some extent. So I think projecting him for little bit more than a season average of 30 is probably the right thing. And a lot of the year we've been missing Sixers from this lineup, but now everyone's healthy. So it seems like they're all going to kind of take away a little bit of potential from each other. Do you feel like there's one guy to target?
It's tough because I do think this is a team to price shop. You mentioned the discrepancy of him across the industry. The ceilings to me remain intact. Like we saw Embiid go for like 80 fantasy points the other day. There's no doubt. But to me, the floors, when you have so many mouths to feed, can be aggressive. And just take Ben Simmons, for example. He's obviously cheaper, 8,700. He was terrible against the Spurs. In the game before that against the Pacers, he was much more effective. And I still think you can target these guys in tournaments. But I do worry a little bit if you're banking on production, because guys like Shake Milton, Tobias Harris, they've got a lot of weapons besides what used to be, in my mind, kind of like a big two.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's interesting that they went with Shake Milton in the starting lineup now because, well, first of all, he was like really great fantasy point per minute guy off the bench, like at the start of the year when he was playing. But in the starting lineup, that kind of like takes away all of his usage and it makes him not that appealing, but it really like, it makes you feel less confident about some of the other guys like Ben Simmons, who you don't really want a Shake Milton on the floor with Ben Simmons. You want a Neto because Shake Milton is a little bit more active. And then you have Al Horford, who last game, he really got way more minutes because I think it was Ben Simmons that was in foul trouble. But for some reason, like, he's just really expensive in the industry. And I can't really understand the Horford price, but that makes it so it's not really a good option.
Josh Engelman trying to crash the party. This guy's a character. I'm with you on Horford. Doesn't really excite me too much. And it similar to what we talked about a little earlier in the show with the Jazz is kind of how I feel with the Sixers. If you have the money, obviously go get Embiid. If you have money for Tobias or Ben Simmons, I do think they make for good targets in tournaments. The ceilings are intact, but in terms of safety, there's a lot of ways this game, and you talked about it, they either blow them out, one of the other Sixers gets going, and your guy is just not asked on the usage side. So be careful there, but they are expected to kind of blow the Wizards off the floor. Anything else before we move on to the second half of the slate?
Honestly, I don't think I'm going to have a single Sixer on DraftKings. They're just like so expensive. On FanDuel, you got some good values though.
There you go. All right, this is a good one. Thunder, Lakers. I'm seeing 4.5 on my screen. Thunder slight dogs, which is not surprising. 225 total. They just played the Nuggets and they lost in that overtime game. You've got guys like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, CP3, Gallinari. We'll start with the Thunder. I think obviously Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is someone that people are going to target. 6,700 on DraftKings, pretty reasonable across the industry. What do you make of him? And then talk about the rest of the Thunder.
Yeah, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, I'm sure a lot of viewers are getting triggered right now because he was aggressively owned the other day, and he let us all down.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he just got. I don't know exactly what happened. I think he had foul trouble, and he just wasn't producing. Right?
Yeah, so he picked up 4 fouls in the third, and then he got bailed out a little. He went to overtime, which helped, but the damage was done with that 4th foul.
That's right. Yeah, he actually made it back to value, if I remember right, in that overtime.
He salvaged.
Yeah, so that was a nice bounce back, but he's let me pull up the numbers for this restart because they've actually been really good on a percentage basis. His usage has gone up from 23.6 in the season to 24. The assists have been higher. Rebounding's a little bit down, but there really aren't any red flags with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He actually doesn't foul at a high rate either, so that was kind of an anomaly. So I think he's definitely a top target today. The matchup versus the Lakers isn't ideal because they're a little bit slower pace and good defensively, but I'm just going back to the well here with SGA. Maybe not 70% owned, but how are you feeling about him?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think this is a guy that until the price, and you talked about this, I do think particularly DraftKings has been quick to, react and adjust the pricing, he's one that I think has maybe remained a little. I wouldn't be stunned to see him bounce over 7K quickly, and he's at 6,700, so he's going to be a target of mine. I don't love the matchup against the Lakers, of course, but in a game like this that should be competitive, I think for them to win a game like this, he has to be very effective. Other than that, I don't have a ton to say. I've seen, you look at someone, I don't even want to mention, Dort is getting a ton of minutes. He's awful right now from three. He needs to start making them. If he does, you're going to plug in 30 plus minutes. Is that a salary saver potentially?
Yeah, at 3.2K, he's definitely a salary saver, but he's also a lineup killer, I have to imagine. So he's just kind of that Andre Roberson mold where he doesn't really have very good per minute production. I have him at about half a point per minute, which is pretty insane. But you're right, he has been gunning it a little bit more in the last few games. So that's an encouraging sign, though he hasn't been making it. I do think that Dennis Schroeder being out, though, that gives him more minutes and it gives everyone more usage because Schroeder on the year is 28% usage or 26%. And the guys that are filling up his minutes are in the low teens. So that's a lot more shots to go around.
Yeah. Honestly, listen, if you're going to say there's a guy $3,200 and he's going to play 30 plus minutes and maybe take 5 plus threes, I think you can make an argument for it, but as you mentioned, he is synonymous with a lineup killer when he's 1 for 6 from 3 every day. So he needs to pick it up. I do think he will have opportunities with Schroeder out. SGA, of course, going to be leading the way, but he's going to need help. On the other side, listen, AD is just a monster right now. Last game, 42 points, 12 boards, a couple steals, a block, couple of assists, just dominant. He was 4 from 8 for 3. That's kind of, I don't want to say a new wrinkle, but man, if he does that, watch out. So talk about him. Is he your preferred guy to spend up on? You've got Braun and then just the rest of the Lakers here.
I think, he's as good an option as anyone to spend up on, but it just seems like the studs today aren't nearly as good as the ones yesterday where AD is amazing. He's probably one of the best players in the league, but he doesn't fill up every category the same way that Giannis or Luka do. And he's basically the same price they were. So I'm just thinking I'm going to take a different approach today where it's a little bit more balanced build. I think the other wrinkle here is the Thunder aren't really a high-paced team. Let me pull up my figures here. So Thunder ranked 21st in pace on the year. The Lakers 11th. So there's not really an edge as far as matchup. So that's kind of leading me other directions where maybe we have some other teams that are more injury depleted. But if we can find enough value, then putting a guy like AD or LeBron in your lineup certainly makes sense. So what do you think these guys fit in as far as the overall context of the slate?
Yeah, that's the important part. Obviously, in a vacuum, when you talk about AD, he's going to make sense. But it's about putting the puzzle pieces together. And on a slate like this, there's not a ton, and we'll see what happens with the Nets. I think that AD is actually directly impacted by the Nets. If a ton of value opens up and you can just easily get him in, raw points are going to be there. But you said it, this is not like a triple-double threat or anything like that. He does it a little differently. And LeBron is kind of, he's going to give you the 35 minutes. He's going to be effective, but I don't know exactly where the ceiling is. So I'm more with you than not on the Lakers. And then, when you look at them going down, you've got 2 guys over 10K. Then you've got Kuzma at 4,300. It's a $6,000 difference to their third wheel. Are you targeting any of the other Lakers today, or do you think that's just a pass?
Kuzma, he's interesting. If he'd be cheaper, I'd be interested. But he's been playing a lot more minutes than his season average, which is weird because the context of the team hasn't changed a lot. So I'm not really counting on that going forward. I could see Caruso fitting into that Lou against Dort range because the thing I noticed with Caruso is his role has changed where he's the backup point guard, kind of filling Rondo's position, and his assists have gone up as a result. On the season, 13% assist percentage, but over the last 3 games, 21%. So that's enough to bump his production into a level where I probably won't take him anyway, but I wouldn't think you're crazy if you took a stab on some Crusoe.
1.95x over on SuperDraft for your boy. Not bad. And it's worth noting out over in Premium Chat, Moses pointed this out. The Lakers are going to be the 1 seed. I don't think it's impossible that they start winding down some minutes here and there, especially if the games, get out of hand. We saw, of course, what happened with the Bucks yesterday. I'm not overreacting to it, but it isn't impossible that, LeBron and AD are wound down here and there. So keep that in mind. We got 2 games left here. We'll start with the Raptors and the Magic. We got Toronto 7-point favorite, 223.5 total. They're just good. It's not a team that I'm a super fan of, to be honest, but every time I watch them, I am impressed, and they just kind of have that balanced build. They've got Siakam and Lowry and Van Vliet, Ibaka, so many weapons. And I think they may actually fit into what you were talking about with this slate. So how do you break down this Raptors team with so many appealing options and all somewhat pretty fairly priced?
Yeah, I mean, the Raptors are almost in like playoff rotations where Fred VanVleet's playing like 24 minutes in the second half and stuff.
Insane,
so
right?
I do want to talk about this concept that Moses brought up in the chat where the Lakers could be resting guys today. And we wouldn't really know until like the slate's long locked. So that does leave some advantage. We saw this with Jimmy Butler yesterday, where maybe value opens up if AD and LeBron sit or something like that. So it is nice to kind of plan for that with the late swaps, because maybe we get a really good value like Kuzma with AD out would be insane. So I think that's worth planning for. But the Vegas line, the 5.5, doesn't really signal any alarm bells. And I think as far as LeBron and AD, like if they're playing, I don't think their minutes are going to be significantly impacted, but there is a good chance they'll rest. But back to the Raptors, I think that they're very expensive as far as the DraftKings prices and the matchup, where the Magic are one of the slowest teams in the league. So I don't see myself getting into any Raptors on DraftKings, because it's just like they're just priced all above where I have them. I mean, like it's not really deep analysis, but that's how are you feeling about them? Like on FanDuel, it's a lot different, but we know exactly who's going to get the minutes. It's just that I'm not sure it adds up to enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very low variance team in that regard. Rotations are tight. The production is pretty tight. Van Vliet, particularly on FanDuel, 7K, no problem with that. I don't know if he can keep this 40 and 42 minutes right off the bat. Now, you give him that, of course, I'm going to be rolling with him in this context. I don't see any indication that it reduces per se. I think he's going to be in line for heavy minutes. And if you do that, I think it's reasonable. Even with Lowry, it's kind of the same thing. He's going to have minutes in the mid 30s, and I don't see that changing regardless of script. I just have trouble. 8,400 seems pretty fair, and when you look at the slate, you're obviously not looking exactly for fair pricing. You're looking for guys who can smash their tag in large field tournaments. That doesn't scream Kyle Lowry to me. So all in all, it's a team I think won't kill you, but I'm not reaching too much for them. One guy I want to ask you specifically, or does he just fall into what you talked about, is Serge Ibaka. He's $6,000 on DraftKings. Is he someone that you're more interested in, less interested? 5,100 on FanDuel kind of caught my eye. Any interest in Serge?
On FanDuel, I think, that price tag's nice. Okay. The thing with the Raptors centers is that they've really only played like combined 48 minutes, where in the scrimmages, we saw a couple, like at least one day, Gasol and Ibaka both started. But the problem is the Magic don't play big enough that I'm really anticipating the Raptors would start him over like OG Anunoby or someone like that. So that kind of makes it hard to really pick Gasol or Ibaka, just because the minutes upside is a little bit hard to count on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen, I think it's a team. It's actually one of the most reliable teams of you kind of know what you're going to get. That doesn't make for great ceilings, but it does make for pretty solid floors. On the other side of the game, we've got the Magic. Jonathan Isaac, of course, hurt. He's gone. You've got Vooch, you've got Gordon, and then you've got the backcourt. Sizable, not impossible underdogs here, 7 points. What do you make of Orlando here in their home bubble?
I like them. I mean, the matchup versus Toronto is kind of a slower matchup too, but they're just priced well. Like Vucevic at 8,100. He's probably the lowest price, kind of like number one option on this team today. So I think he's going to be a core play like he was yesterday. Yesterday we got kind of bailed out because it looked like the Magic were getting blown out, but they still played like their full fourth quarter minutes. So that was kind of nice. But Fournier is nicely priced. And we got to talk about the injuries a little bit because Jonathan Isaac being out, as well as Michael Carter-Williams. I'm kind of thinking about James Ennis because he played a bunch of minutes in the last game, and he's just insanely cheap, 3,300. So it's like that guy like Lugan Store where it's like you get your pick of the litter and these 3K guys, but the litter just isn't very exciting.
Yeah, it's really not. The one thing that's kind of nice about Ennis is at least the situation has changed a little bit. So I think there's, again, more variance, which you can embrace. Like if he picks up a ton of production and gets going, I think his minutes could even push a little upward, and 3,300 really cheap. He played 27 minutes against the Pacers, and he was pretty effective for that price. So again, that's going to be a situation most likely. Say you want AD and Embiid or something, you're going to have to find someone like this. There's really no other way to construct your lineup. So I'm with you there. Vooch kind of just does his things. 2 double-doubles out of 3 games. I wouldn't be stunned to see 3 out of 4 after we're said and done here. I'm not really interested in like Ross or Fournier, to be honest. It just doesn't do much for me on this slate.
I agree. Yeah, Ross, like he's just really expensive for some reason because like you'd think he'd be the beneficiary of these injuries because he would play up to like 29 minutes a game sometimes, but the price is just way too high.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just one that I don't really know how you justify it per se. It doesn't do much when I look at it. All right, we got 5 down. We've got 1 to go. Josh is gone, but if he was here, I know what he would say. He'd say, if you could hit the like button before we get to this last game, it would be much appreciated. We got a ton going on at the site. Like I said, it is PGA Championship mode for me the minute I get off this show. I will have office hours behind the paywall today. I will have a show 8:30 tonight with Jason Roslin. I expect you all there. I'll be taking notes on chat and who comes and who doesn't. We're doing attendance style. But last game, we've got the Celtics 9-point favorite over the Nets. This one, it may be the last game, but Alex, I'm sure you would agree. This may hold the key to the entire slate, particularly with the Nets. I would ask you who you like, but I guess the first question is who the hell is playing? Jared Allen, if he plays, seems like an absolute smash spot. How do you approach, I guess, even in an overarching sense, how do you approach a situation like this where we really don't know and it's the last game on the slate?
So let's start off with what we do know. We know that Kemba Walker isn't going to play in this game. Yep. And that just makes Jaylen Brown, Tatum, and Hayward and Smart just that much better. So we already know there's going to be at least 4 great options in this game. On the Brooklyn side, Jared Allen, as you mentioned, is super cheap. I don't think it'd be crazy to just load up on players in this game. And then when you get the injury news, you can just re-optimize your lineup and you'll have a really sick lineup because there's enough spend up options. So that's something I'm looking at. I assume Harris, Allen, and LeVert will all play. I was kind of interpreting it as rest and not an injury because of all the like simultaneousness of that, which was peculiar. It worked out for them somehow.
Maybe they know, yeah. They don't need those guys.
They really leveled the Bucks and got them to take off their star players, so that worked. LeVert is someone that I'm really interested in because he hasn't really had that blow up game, and we know the potential is there with some of these guys not making the restart. So that's still someone I'm willing to take chances on.
He is someone, yeah. I mean, I honestly was I don't want to say surprised, but he came out against Orlando in that first game. He took 17 shots, and I thought I would have smashed the over if you would have gave me that line. 25 shots in that next game against Washington. I think that's going to be more the norm than not. And I do think if people are lazy and not paying attention, they may box score hunt. And you see guys from the last game with the Nets against the Bucks. Obviously, that's not going to tell the story. If LeVert, Harris, and Allen are in, all those guys that you saw yesterday, I mean, this is a totally different situation, of course. So I'll take advantage of a price that has not moved. He started at 7,800. He's still at 7,800. And if they have any chance in this game, LeVert has to lead the way. Do you, considering what we saw yesterday, if these guys play, does that just completely kill all the value on Brooklyn, considering they're priced up for production that didn't, encounter LeVert, Harris, and Allen yesterday?
It does on DraftKings because they really were aggressive with pricing, like guys like Tyler Johnson and Temple. But on FanDuel, Temple is 3,700 and Johnson's 4K. So those guys, I think we can count on as being significant players regardless of the circumstances. So I'll take some chances on those guys. But on DraftKings, it's really just Harris, Allen, and LeVert with the caveat of if they play. Yeah,
it would be it's a bold strategy if they don't play to play them. Don't do that. Jared Allen. If Jared Allen plays, and I'm not breaking any news here, he would be, I think, maybe the highest owned player on this slate potentially. He's in an absolutely perfect spot. On the other side, as we wind down here, you mentioned it. Kemba's not going to play on a back-to-back, and that is just a massive boost to Tatum, Hayward, Brown, and Smart. Tatum's the most expensive. I think Brown is actually my favorite of the four when you factor in price and potentially ownership. How do you prioritize these guys, or is this just a situation where you want exposure to all of them in some capacity?
Yeah, I think they're all going to be really, really solid. It's just the price that I'm looking at. Like you said, Brown on DraftKings at 6,900. That's a very nice price.
Do what you did there.
You saw that.
I got you. We still have NFL chemistry. We got it going on. No worries.
Yeah. The rest of the team looks good too. I mean, Brooklyn is probably the best matchup right now. They can get in the restart. So I'm totally on the Celtics, especially on FanDuel where they didn't really move the prices. They just look like probably top plays today. Is there any one guy that's jumping out to you?
I mean, like you said, they're all, you're going to be able to justify a pretty easy sell on all of them. To me, Jaylen Brown, though, 6,600 over on FanDuel. If he plays minutes in the upper 30s potentially, I think he's really live to do damage with that tag. Looked really good against the Heat. Can kind of, you're not going to give you a ton of assists, but everything else is going to give you some boards, can rack up steals and blocks, no problem. And I think everybody's going to benefit without Kemba. Now, I'm with you. When you see three guys simultaneously sit, it's almost impossible to think it's injury related. But if for some reason Allen, LeVert, and Harris all sit again, first of all, the spread is going to balloon up, 15, 16 points, probably almost where the Bucks were. That would make me a little more nervous because I do think that there will be serious blowout risk.
Yeah, I think the one difference is that the Bucks just seemingly didn't care at all if they won the game, where the Celtics have a little bit to play for. So I wouldn't expect any shenanigans of the same level. It's just like maybe a blowout. But I want to mention on SuperDraft, we got Jared Allen at 1.65x, Jaylen Brown at 1.45x. So those are definitely my top projected plays on SuperDraft tonight. So I always like playing there because they kind of staggered the start time. It's at 3 p.m. today. So after making my DraftKings and FanDuel lineups, I'm going to definitely stack some Allen and Brown in SuperDraft.
Yeah, 5 games over there. And of course, like I said, we talk about this all the time. You can unlock combinations that are just straight impossible on a salary site. So you don't have to make those decisions where you're like, on FanDuel, I want to play Embiid and Jokic. I think they're the top 2 plays on the slate. Well, you have to choose. You just don't have the luxury of playing both. On SuperDraft, you can play both. You can mix up the multipliers. You could take all salary savers and go for monster multipliers, or you could take all top-end guys and think they smash. So a lot of options over there. Any final thoughts, 6 up, 6 down on this Wednesday NBA slate?
I think there's a lot of really good plays today that really stand out, like these Boston guys, like Orlando. And I think the ownership's going to reflect that. So Oklahoma City as well. So I think it's a good strategy to have a lot of those teams, but you also want to make sure you got a couple of guys that maybe are off the board a little bit more. So it's all about striking that balance where you get an NBA, like a team with probably 6 or 7 guys that are really solid values, and then a couple guys to just mix it up and hope they have big days. So that's kind of my approach for the slate. But any final thoughts for the roster construction here?
No, I think that's something I always, no matter what sport we're talking about, I always talk about that. Taking every guy for pure upside is just as ineffective as taking every guy for safety. You have to strike a balance. You have to correlate it to the tournament you're playing in. Like if you're trying to win a gigantic GPP, you're going to have to do something creative to get it done. And it can be done, obviously, as we've seen here over at Awesemo. So thanks, guys. We made it. We did it. I want to say real quick, we have MLB right on deck here, I believe, Laffy and Adam. But then 1:30 Eastern, Chris Spags, Adam, Ship My Money, taking you guys up to lock. If anything breaks with these Nets or any other news, they will have it there. So come on back. And then 8:30 tonight, me with the PGA. Thanks to Jordan Klein behind the glass. Good luck, everyone, and we will talk to you soon.